Hello and welcome to PSG Review, the show covering the ups and downs, the twists and turns of our beloved Paris Saint-Germain. And 2 matches have been played as I record, and a little bit is still left on the transfer window egg timer. The team has already suffered a major injury, yet things are somehow looking pretty okay. How about that?
You are listening to PSG Review. Here's your host, Mikko.
Great to have you with me. I'm a little late in recording this after the Friday night's match, of course, but had some things to do and places to be in during the weekend, and also birthday to celebrate, but we are here now. Thanks for sharing this moment once again as we turn our gaze towards the inner workings of PSG. Find and follow the show, and subsequently also me online on Twitter, as I still call it, and realistically can't really foresee myself changing that. Well, there I am at PSG Review Pod, and on Instagram and TikTok you will find me as at PSG Review. By all means, rate, review, like, subscribe, or whatever else is available on the podcast platform that you use. I must say, I don't know how much that will impact the algorithms, but what you can always do, only if you want and feel it's worth your while, is to listen to the show and recommend it to other people who could find it interesting. There's no billionaire that can decide the success or failure of that attempt. And subscribe, and the episodes will find you rather than the other way around. The season was always going to be a little bit of a mystery. I mean, it still continues to be that. We shouldn't probably get too far ahead of ourselves after only 2 matches in League On, but especially the second one gave me hope. A lot of hope, actually. And a disclaimer here, we all understand, of course, that the hope can't be snatched away from us at any point, but as PSG beat Montpellier at Parc des Princes, and their result resembled something that you would see in a dominant tennis match, 6-love. If you're not hip with the tennis lingo, that means that the opposition was unable to answer any of our points. In this admittedly stretch example, goals, it was 6-0. And who is this superstar then that has taken over the PSG team this season? Well, that is the team. That's the PSG team led by Luis Enrique. The team is the star. In our recent past, let's say QSI era, even when things went well, I was always a little bit bothered by players walking around the pitch and not making the contribution unless it was on their specific part of the pitch. Of course, you can't expect everyone to be everywhere all the time, but the impact is visible when you have 11 players actively participating all the events on the pitch, at the very least by being attentive and unafraid to run both directions. It's that teamwork. And actually, Luis Enrique said after the Montpellier match that you didn't see one star today, but rather 16 who came to defend the colors of Paris Saint-Germain. 16 stars who all attacked and also defended. That's perfection. That's what we are looking for. 16, of course, refers to the 11 starters and 5 substitutions available in one match. A few days earlier, the club had released a very interesting and insightful interview with the coach. He was talking about the same theme there from a slightly different angle.
Si un jugador tiene dudas en venir al PSG, no lo queremos.
If a player has doubts about coming to PSG, we don't want them. It's as simple as that. We want players who feel they are coming to Paris to make history, who are hungry, who have the desire. If they are hesitating between one club and another, we don't want them. Yes, that is what I tell the players. With Luis Campos, we don't want someone to come and do us a favor. It's the opposite. We want someone who is hungry, who wants to come to a unique club like PSG, a unique city and unique country, who wants to make history.
Que tenga ganas de hacer historia.
This is music to my ears and hopefully yours too, because it has been very difficult, if not absolutely impossible for us to say with a straight face in the recent years, the entire QSI era actually, that we play as a team where everyone is on same level, equal, and there are no players who are priorities. And of course, we still have some players whose contribution is more significant or who are simply more difficult to replace. But we are playing as a team, and since football is a team sport, we should play as a team. That's how it works. I feel like we have certainly given the star power, a good go, a very fair go, and that's not me saying that we shouldn't, or let alone that we won't ever have superstars again. I'm sure we will. We might do, but the cohesion is what counts, and hopefully those superstars are going to come from within that squad as well. And this is something that is understood now, the cohesion. Recruiting an expensive superstar when other areas in the squad are not up to the standard is not only a band-aid solution to a proverbial broken fifth metatarsal. You can consider it marketing move, of course, but at the same time, if you don't get the results at the end of it, as you probably won't, and depends on what you count as results, we really haven't had them. We have had them domestically, but not so much in Europe. It doesn't end up being that great PR either, and all in all, it just sort of strikes everyone as something a rich person does to problem solve when they can't be bothered to throw money at the problem. We are currently breaking some old optics and hopefully learning from them. It's looking pretty positive to me. Football, of course, is not only about scoring goals. There's more to it, although of course you win the match by scoring. Obviously, if you don't concede more than you are managed to put on the back of the net yourself, these are fairly obvious truisms. So it's not that we don't celebrate defensive players or goalkeepers, but it was one of the concerns before the season started, that who will score the goals for us this season, because the guy who had done it in the past couple of seasons is gone, and really I won't talk about him because I'm already so tired that this team is analyzed and his name still pops up the most, as it does tend to, even when you're listening to the match commentaries and so on and so forth. Even then it still comes up, and that to me is utter rubbish. I don't want that to happen. I understand that it's something that happened, it's a past, and it's something that people like to talk about, but the point here that I'm making is that the scoring was a question mark. Who is going to do that? It was a concern, and even more so when, dare I say, our expected candidate for the top scorer of the season got injured. That is, of course, Gonzalo Ramos. But the answer to the question who is going to score PSG's goals this season is, as it has to be, everyone, the whole team. So far in these two matches, we have had 3 goals for Bradley Barcola, Lee Kang-in with 2 goals and 1 goal for Ousmane Dembele, Randal Kolomuani, Marco Asensio, Achraf Hakimi, and Warren Zaire-Emery. 7 different goal scorers in 2 matches. It is also true that there's been quite a few goals, a lot of goals. Our goal difference is 10-1, so plus 9 goals, and top of the Ligue 1 table at this point, which of course at this point of the season isn't all that important, but it's better to be on top than on the bottom. I always say during the preseason friendlies that you should not really read too much into them, because it's such a specific time of the season, things are being tried out and nobody's really like cooking with full gas, so things are only in the very beginning of the season. There is a massive difference in these 2 first rounds of Ligue 1, and that difference, of course, is that these 6 points that we now have will still stand late next spring when we figure out who the champion of France is. So they are clearly significant, but at the same time it's difficult to say anything much more conclusive beyond those points, because anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's been a good start, but anything can happen. We must try to fight the temptation to start feeling overconfident, but what we are allowed to feel is happy. We are allowed to feel happy always, and that this has not always been the case, not every year. So this has been a great start for the season, and hopefully it only will get better, as we are also going to be playing more difficult teams, both domestically but also in some time also on the continent. PSG's diversified attacking assets were particularly on display against Montpellier. In that match alone, we had Bradley Barcola with 2 goals, João Ness 2 assists for him, and his total now after 2 matches, neither which he played from start to the end, is 4 assists, and this requires some comparative numbers, because you think that 4 assists, well, that's good, but first of all, João Ness himself provided 2 assists last season, the whole season, for Benfica. So he has already doubled that by now. Last season, the top assist providers in Ligue 1 had 8 assists. So after this handful of minutes in the 2 first matches, he's halfway there, which is just pretty insane fact. And finally, he won up no less than Neymar Jr., who had 3 assists in his first 2 matches with PSG. João Ness now has 4. He's 19 years old, by the way. So that's very good. Dembele got 2 assists against Montpellier. We're getting back into the Montpellier situation. Hakimi had a goal and an assist. Zaire-Emery with a goal. Lee Kangin also with the goal, as was Marco Asensio. And finally, Nuno Mendes with an assist. A beautiful assist, by the way. A sort of perfect cross to Achraf Hakimi, who then scored that goal. It is very impressive. These are impressive numbers, like really inspiring, actually. Also, in this match, Désiré Doué made his PSG debut, and while he didn't get on the score sheet, he was constantly dangerous. Of course, there's also Vitinha, who can strike at any time, or Fabian Ruiz, who did so well this summer for his national team. So he's dangerous, and even the young Ibrahim Baye, who actually started the first match of the season against Le Havre, had a good couple of occasions in that match that could have been. They weren't, but they could have been. Now, it is perfectly possible that Baye might not make his big breakthrough this season, although, what do I know, I'd love for him to be all that he can be whenever that takes place, but perhaps it is still more likely that in this campaign there will be more threat by Seny Mayulu. That's unless there's a last-minute loan deal or something like that. Seny Mayulu reminds me of young Christopher Nkunku and even Moussa Diaby, actually, when they were on a come-up, making their initial appearances with our first team. And when they came from the bench, you didn't quite know what will happen. But you knew that something, well, probably there is that much youthful excitement around them when they play. Sheer determination and complete lack of fear. And that's how I see Seny Mayulu as well. So while he hasn't yet gotten his chances, he's also there. He's there waiting in the wings. And right now he might be fairly low on pecking order. That is understandable. But still, the season is very long, and Warren Zaire-Emery didn't start as the first choice in his breakthrough season either. So you never know what's going to happen. But I am getting ahead of myself now. It is true that we haven't yet played against the toughest teams in the world of football, but of course we can only play the teams that we're scheduled to play. The best teams will come in later, and so far we have done very well. The team has been a joy to watch, and that's something because you and I both know that this hasn't always been the case. One of those tougher opponents is actually up next as PSG goes to Lille on the coming Sunday. I mean, Lille is not Real Madrid or Manchester City or one of those teams, Arsenal, but nevertheless it is a little bit better team, quite a lot better team, I think, perhaps, than Montpellier or Le Havre is. That would be my estimation at this point of the season. Anyway, the question is, now will Lille's busy August help them or hurt them? They have had a very busy time with these qualifying rounds for Champions League, and that type of thing, it has got its pros and cons, because on one hand they played a lot more, so they are further into their competitive season, but at some point you can also feel it in your legs. On Wednesday they'll play in Prague, then us on Sunday. In some of the previous years, for instance, Monaco has struggled with the load early on in the season when they have had to play these qualifying matches towards the group stage as it was, and it has compromised their campaigns in some of those years from start onwards. So this is something to have your eyes on. What is going to be the case with Lille? I really hope that they're going to make it to the Champions League, but at the same time I'm hoping that PSG is going to take care of business on next coming Sunday. It's not that easy to be in full form early on in the season, as Lille will have to be, or they've already had to be, to play 2 matches a week. Of course, they are rested a little bit after the summer, but we will find out how it will go for them. In Europe, they've done very well, and also in Ligue 1, they have 2 wins now from 2 matches. And of course, they do have a secret weapon. The Belgian magician Thomas Meunier, hate him or love him, or something in between, as I'm sure is the case with the most of us. He is there whether you want it or not. Time for some rumors. Look, man, and that is a pun. If you are a careful listener of this show, you might be aware that I'm fairly reluctant to regurgitate gory gossip cynically spewed by the worst end of the press. I tend to wait until things look more likely, or at least a step closer to realistic, before I look into them, because even if you take this summer as an example, there are so many players that have been linked with us by now. And who knows what type of truth or even potential they ever were behind those transfers that never happened. But there's also a lot of talk, and now that we are fast approaching the time to close this transfer window, we will have many more bits of info during the course of this week. It is going to be quite hectic one, and you know what, some unlikely sounding deals will take place, whether it's with PSG or some other team. Now, just so you know, I'm recording this episode on Monday midday around that time, so that is to anchor the information that I'm talking about now into a point of time, because it can change very quickly. This can be even signed and announced very quickly this week because it's the last week of the window, but this is the information that I have at the moment. Two Nigerian forwards, Osimhen, who has been linked with us the whole summer, and Ademola Lookman, who of course scored a hat-trick in the Europa League final last spring to win it with Atalanta, and causing at the same time the only defeat for Bayer Leverkusen during the entire season, which is pretty out there things that have happened. That was a great achievement for Bayer Leverkusen, but I've digressed now. Yes, I'm talking about Ademola Lookman, also Victor Osimhen. They are being talked about, but how close it is that Ademola Lookman, for instance, would come to Paris. Well, this is the thing. On one hand, there are rumors that he would have already agreed on his personal side with the club, and it's up to Atalanta now. Basically, the suggestion there on that side of the press is that the move would be imminent. This is quite typical. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it could also mean something. A few days ago, it was also reported that the file had cooled down considerably. I have no insight beyond that. With the injury of Gonzalo Ramos, perhaps PSG is also on a lookout if there is a deal that makes sense and actually is a good deal. But if things become overpriced and otherwise complicated, it might be better to stay away from them. That is just my opinion. Like, for instance, the deal with Ryan Cherki, that dossier has been on the table of Luis Campos, at least according to the reports we have heard, for quite a few, couple of transfer windows already, but it seems to have been put away, which I'm happy with. And that's not because he isn't an incredible talent football-wise, but because I don't trust his ability to really embrace our collective. I may be wrong, maybe I am, and I do actually wish him the very best, so don't get me wrong, but I feel like his attitude is someone else's risk to take. Of course, it's always very funny because, believe it or not, they're not exactly consulting me when they are negotiating these deals, but yet we as fans, we like to talk about them as we are on the table, part of the talks, part of the negotiation, but that's the nature of this experience, and I somehow feel very protective myself of the peace that I sense around our locker room now that the stars have gone, that the biggest egos have gone, and I don't just mean one star, but in the recent years, the whole system and the structure of PSG have been thoroughly shaken, and maybe it's my hunch, some sort of preconceived cynicism or just prejudice, I don't know, but I feel like Cherki could potentially be one of those players who have been elevated to such extent during his youth career and his early arrival to the adult side of football that he might have believed some of the hype. I haven't seen too much development in a few years, and there must have been a reason why Thierry Henry had no trust in him during the Olympics. Even during the moments when goal was desperately needed for France. Admittedly, Désiré Doué wasn't trusted too much either. More than Cherki, definitely, but he wasn't a starter or anything like that. So I don't really have an agenda against Cherki in the internet. The young people always say, you have an agenda against somebody. I don't have enough time in my life to have agendas against individual players or anything of that nature. But, of course, Cherki is, managed by the agency that is owned by Faisal Amari, the mother of Kylian Mbappe. That doesn't help. I mean, I think we could do some time without that clan for now. But either way, there are just some red flags around Cherki. That makes me suspicious. He will do fine elsewhere. I have no doubt about that. But perhaps that should not be in Paris. Jadon Sancho, another player that could go to the same category, it's still a deal that is being talked about. It could work very well, and no one is doubtful of his potential either, but will you get the Dortmund Sancho or the Manchester United Sancho? That is the question. Undoubtedly, he would become one of the best paid players in the squad, but would he be a starter? How would that impact the dynamics? How would that impact the spirit within the crew? There are risks that are involved right now, and there always are risks. Things are looking very good as they are, but at the same time, when it comes to these players, the injury suffered by Gonzalo Ramos is a reminder that we need death, because there is a lot of football to be played. There are even a few more matches again this season than in the previous ones, and losing a key player can happen at any time. It can happen at any moment, and there's no warning which player it will be. You have to consider that any player could at any moment miss the whole rest of the season, even the season after that, or even just a few months, or even just a key match, whether it's injury or suspension. So what happens to the team if that player is Bradley Barcola? What happens if it's Vitinha? What happens if it's Hakimi, Marquinhos? What happens if it's Gigio Donnarumma? The squad has to have an answer for any eventuality. That is the job for, Luis Campos and also Luis Enrique. We will note the final facts of the window this week, so no need to wait for much longer as the window closes Friday, August 30th, as the clock strikes 11 p.m. in Paris. As has become somewhat traditional, PSG finds itself in need of selling some players. What, of course, is relatively recent feature in all of this is that we might even be able to do that and not just our promising academy players as used to be the case. So there are a few notes on the action on that side that could still take place when it comes to selling or loaning out players. Saudi Arabian club Al Ittihad is said to be after Danilo. The football romantic option would have been his return to Portugal and Porto, where he played from 2015 to 2021 before he joined us. Now it seems that the Saudis would like to sign him this summer, and what of course is noteworthy and very important to remember is that their transfer window is open much longer than ours in France. That one is open until October the 6th, so there's time there. A lot of time actually for a deal like that to happen. I have always liked Danilo. I like his attitude and his incredible work ethic. I have said this many times, but there were a few seasons there when he was easily our best defensive player. But perhaps it's Enrique's system, or perhaps every day being a day further from his 30th birthday, whatever it might be. Perhaps this time is the time for him to make the move. Maybe that's the best for everybody, but I have nothing but love for him and gratitude for what he has given to us. The thing about Danilo is that he's one of those players who I feel has given us the proverbial 110%. I mean, Lionel Messi, great player, maybe the best. Maybe he gave us like a 30% of himself. So that's something in his case, that is still something. But I feel like Danilo performed for a long time at the absolute top end of his abilities. And that's something that I appreciate a lot. I wish Danilo and his family all the best, come what may. Carlos Soler's priority now seems to be to join West Ham, and he's had some interest elsewhere as well. But Le Parisien newspaper was saying, so have a few other sources as well, that the negotiations are already ongoing between PSG and West Ham. But also West Ham needs to sell some players. That tends to be the case. That's always a big question mark. The alternative, of course, if they are not able to sell players, is an initial loan deal, which then turns into a permanent transfer a little down the line. It is sort of an accounting question of which year those deals are falling. So it depends which part of the bookkeeping it goes and how it reflects on the financial fair play and things like that. Milan Skriniar is no longer part of Luis Enrique's plans. That has been clear for some time now. There's been some murmurs that Juventus and Bayern Munich are reportedly showing some interest in him, but haven't heard anything concrete on them. This Monday morning, as I record this episode, Napoli has been mentioned, but the last week of the window might be meaningful in his case too. If there's something coming, it will have to come very quickly, and his large salary won't make this easy, but anything is possible. Not necessarily probable, but possible nonetheless. And I have to also add that Nordi Mukiele might be in the same category. Also, he has surprisingly high salary, so might not be the easiest player to sell, but we'll see how it's going to go. And then if PSG is going to sell two defenders that Luis Enrique is not counting on this season, it's still quite a big hit to the numbers and that depth that I was talking about before. So would that require some last-minute purchase still? Well, that's something that we don't have to wait for very long to find out. Manuel Ugarte deal has been one of the big talking points of this summer. He's of course been rumored to join Manchester United for a few months now, and it seems very likely that this deal will be pushed through in the last days of Mercato, and apparently there already is an agreement in principle. I think this is a also a chance that this deal could go through and be finalized very soon, very quickly. It might have already happened when you are hearing me talking about this, when you're listening to this episode. The reports are suggesting that it will be a loan deal with 60 million buy option, which would inescapably then would turn into an obligation to buy, as the clauses that ensure it are easy to achieve. I don't know the details, but there you go. And according to one of our least favorite sources, and make of that what you will, L'Equipe says that PSG is still trying to get that 60 million fee from Manchester United this summer instead of next summer, which would be the case if it was an initial loan and then buy later. This seems to be yet to be resolved, this situation, but like I said, this should be happening. The deal should be happening. It could already have happened when you hear this. And also now it seems there's a chance that Manchester United seems to be able to get some deals through themselves, selling some players, which could mean that they get the money to pay. Even now already, like I said, these are accounting questions. They're very important questions for the structure, for the business of this club. But if you are just thinking about it purely from a footballing perspective, then what we are hoping for is to see that the right players are being sold as well as the other ones are being recruited, so everybody finds a good place for themselves. So this is something that has been happening and might have already happened when you hear this. The rumors are suggesting, the reports are suggesting that Jean-Claude Blanc, our old friend who went to Manchester with Ineos, is very much in the center of this deal as well, these negotiations. So there certainly are people who have been, former PSG employees at the very least. Valencia is apparently moving forward with the recruitment of Juan Bernat. Very little else to say about that. I don't know. This is something that I read about. Who knows? I hope that Juanito finds himself a good club. I did enjoy having him in Paris, even with these injuries and all that he was suffering from. He scored some great goals in his golden years. He was a nice player to have for those couple of seasons. Then we have a move that has already happened. PSG's last January signing, Gabriel Mochardo, has joined Stade Reims on loan. So in under 1 year since the last January mercato, he has been recruited to PSG. Then he was diagnosed with a tumor. He was operated on in Qatar, recovering from this thing, and then he went back to Brazil on loan, returned to PSG this summer, and then was loaned again. It's quite a ride for a young man. I will be the first to say that my 2024 has not been equally eventful. Moscardo, of course, also is a very promising player, but clearly not yet considered to compete for starting position in Paris. We do have a good midfield. Again, the question is to what extent, how much depth do you need? But maybe he needs more minutes than we need depth. Maybe that is the analysis that has been made. And this anyway is the thing with these young promising players as he is. And you have to take a little bit of a risk or forget about it at all, because the next price tag that you might have had to pay for a player like him could have been astronomical. So this loan deal could be a win-win, and reportedly there is an option for PSG to call him back in January. So should there be, for instance, some injury or something like that to one of our midfielders, it could still happen that this option would be exercised. So I'm inclined to think that it's a sensible bit of business. I trust that the directors, the leaders are doing the right thing, of course. And even if I didn't, they would still do that. But it's not an easy thing for a club like ours to navigate these situations. The same thing pretty much with Şendoğan, who has been loaned out to Besiktas now in Turkey. But was it an error to sign him when we did 1 year ago? Or does he just require a little bit longer to get to the needed level, to get to that experience? Of course, very young players. Both of these are very young players, but they have been signed, I assume, as having one eye on the future of our midfield. But for now, they haven't been seen as a candidates to take over, or even necessarily so much so that they would be coming from a bench. And it is true that we have quite good midfielders on the bench as well. But when it comes to these deals, like for instance, Mochardo or Şendoğan, the success or failure of them, these deals, it will only become evident much, much further down the road. The return of Presnel Kimpembe has truly been an elusive subject. Now we have a closest to a concrete estimation, which is after the first international break, which, let's face it, is still not massively precise considering how many times everything about his absence has been rewritten. But now they're saying that he should be back. The first international break is going to be ending, I think, after 9th of September. He has by now, according to Transfermarkt, missed 1.5 years of football. That is 542 days and counting. What does that even mean anymore? I'm not saying he has forgotten how to play football, but it's a very long time to be away, and I think it's only realistic to say that we cannot know how long it will take for him to reach a reasonable form, or even if it can still happen. I cross my fingers so hard that it hurts, but in life we don't get such guarantees. Before this injury, he had also missed the World Cup in Qatar with the hamstring issue, but his early years saw almost no injuries. I mean, some here and there, but not a lot that were very serious at least. But somehow in the recent few years, things have been much more difficult. And it's difficult to count on the new estimates of his comeback when it's been pushed back so many times. Presko's contract was about to end mid-recovery. That would have been this summer actually, but just days before last Christmas, he signed a short-term extension with his club de cœur, the club of his heart, like the French say, PSG. And an extension that perhaps someone less important to the club's academy folklore would not have been afforded. Kimpembe, of course, is a fan favorite because of his career from the academy up, his endless demonstrations of love to the badge, and almost an ambassadorial role as bridge between the youth system and the first team. We also remember his Champions League debut pocketing Messi and many other sacrifices that he has made down the line. I don't doubt his work ethic, not at all, or his mentality. Those seem fairly strong, but it is a concern. He has just turned 29 years, so for a footballer, he isn't young anymore, and there genuinely is no guarantee how his body will cope or how long it will take for him to find the required level. And will his body remain intact while working towards that level? These are all questions that we can ask, but we can't have the answers for them. Only time will tell. I hope he can make a strong return. He deserves it, as do we, the fans. He is one of our own and will always be a Parisian titty. PSG women are in Australia as we speak, starting their pre-season tour and tournament there. They will play a few matches there and already had a friendly against Le Havre at the training center in Paris before this flight. A lot of young players were in that first friendly match against Le Havre, but notably a hat-trick by our new Dutch forward Romé Lecter and a goal by another addition, this time from Nigeria, and that's Jennifer Onyi-Ejenini, also known as Joe Ejenini. Otherwise, quite uneventful match, that one, but the big news for the women's team is that extension of Jackie Groenen, the Dutch midfielder with the number 14 on her back, as is the tradition of Johan Cruijff from the Netherlands, of course. And she is now connected to us with this new signature until the summer of 2027. I did mention this some time ago when Sakina Karshawi extended her contract, that it could feel like a pretty standard extension, but it is my experience that in women's football the contracts are genuinely fairly short, so this is a significant commitment from top player, at least more significant than I think it would be if it was on a men's side that somebody would make a contract for 3 years. But this speaks well of our current state of the project, that the players who are, after all, the people who are there in the belly of this specific beast count on its future. They see the future. That hasn't always been the case, and it should not be taken for granted. Regarding our women's side, there's also a nice interview online with PSG's new goalkeeper, Mary Earps. The video is by 90 Min Football, which is a fairly big football platform, and I will link the interview in the show notes as they are. It's a fascinating thing. Not necessarily the interview, that's pretty standard chat, but Mary Earps, because we haven't quite had a player like her in our women's team, and with her will come a certain amount of attention in the UK and in the English-speaking world. It will be an interesting thing to witness, I think.
The team is one of the best in Europe without a shadow of a doubt, and hopefully I can come in and help and add that quality, and we'll be in a really strong position to compete for trophies and titles, and I'm looking forward to that challenge.
And when I say we haven't had a player like her, I don't mean player as good as she is. Mary Earps is a good player, don't get me wrong, but we have had and we do have many good and great players. We have world-class talent in the squad, but Earps is a high-profile individual in her home country. She is the winner of 2024 BBC Sports Personality of the Year award. That's not nothing. And what she is that. She's personality. She has certain charisma, the type that she knows her worth, but is able to avoid arrogance. I think for the most part she is quite funny based on her TikTok videos. Now, I'm hardly a TikTok type of person. I'm very far from it, but I did open an account there for this show to promote the show. That is at PSG Review. Go and click that. But that's a side note. Mary Earps does this type of pretty entertaining videos about her life in Paris and calls it PS Chisel and things like that. How things have started, her new life here. This comes across quite genuine person. Perhaps that is just how TikTok works. This is her driving in Paris and working her way to the infamous traffic circle of Arc de Triomphe.
2 hands on the wheel, people.
Yes.
10 and 2. 10
Make
and
sure
2.
we make this.
Okay, where are the lanes?
Yeah,
there's no lanes.
Why is there no lanes? Why is there a bus?
You'll be happy to hear that they made it safely. But she is celebrity, and our women's team, we haven't really had a celebrity like her there before. Not like this, I don't think. And right now, and this could change, but right now, if you go to the PSG's online store in the internet, the front page, you will see her face there, because as soon as she joined, there was an opportunity to buy the goalkeeper's shirt with her name too. And this is something that came up when she was in the English side that won the Euros a few summers ago. She made a bit of a fuss about the availability or lack there of goalkeeper shirts for the fans to buy them. And something similar has now happened in Paris also. Not necessarily the fuss, but they are available. And by fuss, I, by the way, don't mean trouble. I don't mean anything negative, just that she pushed it through as she should have. Not sure to what extent it was the case in Paris that she had to do that. Maybe it was done on her behalf. Perhaps it's just how it worked, but there was a precedent, certainly, to say the least. It is genuinely interesting to have her in Paris and to see if her charisma will be enough for more positive changes at PSG and also in the French league, as it is starting again in September. Fresh new winds are blowing, or so I hope at the very least. We have only gotten started, but the first international break is almost here. It will start after the next match, which for us is on Sunday night, 1st of September in Lille. And it should end by 9th, of course, of September, depending on the schedules of their respective national teams. Can only hope for no injuries for any of our players, or any players in general, as the football business is very much trying to push the envelope in terms of how much football can one player play in 365 days without injuries, getting the better of them. But that's what we are dealing with. Noteworthy thing also is that this Thursday there will be a Champions League draw. There's a new system that is introduced this autumn, and we will know what type of teams we will be playing before the Christmas and when. Women's team will play a friendly match against West Ham on the 29th in Perth, Australia. That's part of their preseason tour. And then a few days later, they will play either Manchester City or Leicester, depending on the results of all of those matches. Winners playing against winners and losers against losers. So let us be on the winning side, although, of course, these are just friendlies. But good PR opportunities, not only to PSG women's team, but also French women's football in general. Transfer window is also closing soon enough, so what this week holds, we don't know yet, but action is possible. Then we are set with the squad we have. Some players still might be sold to some other leagues, but no more incoming players after that Friday night until the next January, which seems too far to even think too deeply about at this point. This is PSG Review. My name is Mikko. Thank you so much for listening, and do take care. Until next time. Peace.